really, to sum those up, we have about 350 salespeople globally, and they generate about 1.8 billion in US revenue. So they're extremely busy people. And what we've seen is as we've asked sales leadership on an annual basis, how much time can we allocate to learning, where we were upwards of 100 hours about 5 years ago, the allocation we've been given the last 3 years is you can have 40 hours a week with my sales organization, have them out of the field, not selling. Huge pressure on formal learning, obviously, when they have things that are compliance related, leadership related, and product related. A very global sales organization, rarely in the office, very mobile sales organization. So they don't have access to these devices, which gives them limited access to our LMS, to other online things like our extranet. And at the particular time we introduced the solution, we're in a very concentrated time of product launch activity. Typically, we as an organization launch 1 or 2 product platforms in a year. And we're on a pace to launch 4 to 5 product platforms a year for 3 years, which we did. To make the problem worse, we have a large annual trade show once a year for all the contract furnishing suppliers based in Chicago in June, and typically everyone tries to launch their products because it's when you have a very large audience, thousands and thousands of people coming to see your new work. So we try to get all of the learning in prior to June. So not only 5 products in a year, 5 products in probably about a 2-month window leading up to this trade show. And sales cycles are fast. Our industry is being commoditized. We still can set ourselves apart through design, the consulting we do with our clients, but the fact is our competition is increasing and they are very fast. So we have to match that speed or be faster. So our solution was a mobile product performance support platform. We started on the BlackBerry platform, which is still working for us internationally. It's changing in the US, which I'll share with you in a bit. Really the goal is to get the product knowledge as close as we can to the point of sale. That could be up to meeting with a client. Stephanie could be my client, we're in the same room, ask a question about the environmental aspects of a product. I can supply the answer right on the spot as opposed to having to return to my office, make a phone call, find it through another source. Really the idea is to give them contextual support in just a couple of clicks and just a few minutes. Ask the question, 2 clicks, I find the answer, we're back on task. We're continuing moving the sales process forward. And ultimately a faster knowledge exchange will lead to a faster sales cycle. Again, in this commoditized industry that we're in, it's also a point of differentiation. If we can respond faster than the competition can, it gets us to the next point in the sales process faster than they do. So there are a few key components of this transformation, some of which will be themes you've heard from Stephanie. One is we had to let these people know that this is learning and performance support. We're not replacing one with the other. They both have their time and place. It depends on perhaps when I'm a new employee or there's a new introduction or there's a requirement placed on us by the business or regulators. We still need formal learning in those situations. What we don't expect people to do is return to that formal learning when they're in that moment of need, where they need to answer the question or they're prepping for the client meeting in the client's lobby. And in those situations, we want them to choose performance. What that forced us to do is move ownership of that decision to the learner. We have an organization that was very used to us or sales leadership telling them what to do and when to do it in terms of learning. And we had to give that up. That was difficult for some people in the learning and development function. That was difficult for some people in sales leadership. But when we gave the choice over to the learners, they were more than ready to take it from us. Many of them were relieved, finally, just let me control my own learning. What we did, though, is we told them, here are the different types, here are some situations in which you might use these different types. So we tried to teach them in context. What device might you use prepping for a client meeting? And that's a complex question. Where am I? I'm in a cab. Okay, the results get very few at that point, or the opportunities. There's one go-to source. If I'm in the office and I have that same question, I might have 4 options to go to. So really making them resourceful, helping them understand that they're a choice and when to apply the different choices we provided them. And we'd help we'd sustain this by informing them in context. And what I mean by that is when we're introducing the new product, we would tell them, here are the different types of learning available for this product. You can come to the session in Chicago, you could go online, you can go to your mobile device, and give them reasons why they might choose one over the other. One of the other aspects that proved very powerful in this process was single source publishing. The dilemma for me as a leader of a learning and development organization is we're introducing a second platform. We don't have the resources to bring on additional staff to do any additional authoring or reformatting of content. So we pursued a single source publishing model, and what this gave us is a way to create one set of content objects. So if we just look at this on the screen, that's a content object, some image, some words. And how can we get that out to these outputs that we're advertising to our learners? And what we've done is created a model where we author the objects one time with the subject matter expert, and then through the publishing process, we can publish them as a desktop-based performance support system, which you see here on the left. The mobile on the right is a SCORM-based output, so we can have them on the LMS for the new learner who needs some more hand-holding, some more guidance through their development in their first couple of months as a salesperson with us. And then the fourth output is in a PDF format. We still go out, especially to our resellers, our dealer organization, and we will take the product and we'll take product manuals out to them. So we'll publish the same content in a manual form for those live in-person events. The fifth mode we're working on now is for iOS, so getting this available to our sales organization as they start to shift to tablets, predominantly iPads, for this kind of learning. This has been very efficient for us. It makes maintenance quite easy. We change the source content object, and then we just republish out into the different channels. So we have consistency, people have trust that the content is accurate, it's relevant, no matter which one of the sources they go to. As we rolled this out then, it was interesting. Learners started demanding more from us, and one of the things they wanted was that trust, and knowing that the content was fresh, it was relevant. So we actually took upon the practice of letting them know each time we updated it and doing version control that they could see. So they're seeing dates. This is when the last time it was refreshed was. The other thing they started asking for is, which was even more powerful, is the knowledge is great, it's at my fingertips, now help me apply it. And this was really a move for us that when we first launched, we didn't have this layer of content in the system. But in this example, we're giving them a diagnostic process to sell one of our task chair products. And if what's most important to the customer is environmental responsibility, then we give them an order in which to position the chairs with the client. Lead with the air-on chair, follow with the embody, close with the mirror. Each has a different price point, which is always a factor. But if environmental responsibility is the key, the air-on chair is the most environmentally responsible. And then we give them the data to kind of support the position to the customer. This was received very well. We've since launched this with our lines of storage products, of which we have many. And this is really what the salespeople have now found most useful, having in the palm of their hands, is this ability to go through this diagnostic process with a client and have the support very accessible. So some of our results, you'll see things very similar actually to what Stephanie shared with you. It's this notion of it's quick, it's easy, it's at my fingertips. I can use it in a client meeting. One of the measures in terms of just efficiency, how often it's being used, is comparing it to our traditional e-learning. And for the last 3 years, the transactions and the performance support tools outweigh those of the e-learning modules 5 to 1. The e-learning is not a zero, and you'll see here only 3% when we did some analysis said they used it to replace the e-learning. That tells me the message got through and people know when to choose one mode over the other. Interestingly, you can see some of the other information here. If we combine people prepping for a client meeting or responding to a customer situation, 63% of people are using this in the context of the selling process. So they're not, out there because they're curious or they have a few spare minutes in one day. They're going out to respond directly to keep moving the sale forward. with this solution. Some of the expectations that we've had to manage, it was interesting when we put this product forward, a few things happened that we didn't expect, some of them that we did. One of the first questions, though, was when can we get all of the products mobile? And we're talking over 80 product lines in our organization. We really had to balance that with ease of use. Something that has 6 choices versus 80 choices, and then you put 10 to 20 content objects behind each one of those, it can become quite cumbersome for the user. So we actually used our analytics. We took their own behavior, gave that back to them, and said, we recommend that we keep things here for 12 months. When we looked at the analytics, the first 30 to 60 days, extremely high usage, then it starts to roll off, and then there's a steady decline through about 180 to 210 days. And at that point, they're only hitting a certain content object maybe 5 times a week from those 350 people. So it was pretty easy for us to take those analytics back to them and say, we recommend 12 months, and here's why. This is how you're using it. So we have things on a 12-month life cycle. It means there are only 5 or 6 products on the platform at any one time. But that question initially was a difficult one to answer until we turned to our analytics. There's also the expectation of multiple devices. This one's been a little harder to crack, but we're working on it, as I mentioned, with the iOS solution. When we started, our organization was standardized on the BlackBerry device. Our international sales organization still is. The US-based sales organization now, along with the rest of our US-based corporations, on a device of choice program. So we're rapidly trying to respond to the pressures that applies to us. Mainly, taking some of what Stephanie talked about, we're going to a cloud-based solution and a device-agnostic design and publishing process. But that's been a shift for us that we didn't have to deal with at the start. The other thing we've seen is our request for video in the tool, and we've actually deliberately not put video into the tool. If I get back to some of those statistics, or one of our goals being 2 clicks and 10 seconds to get the information, when we've had that conversations with users, and the option is between a 30, 60, 90-second video versus 2 clicks. Again, if all I'm looking for is the recycled content of a chair, they'd much rather have the 2 clicks and the 10 seconds and not the video. We are publishing videos, they're just not part of this solution. They're housed in our extranet, where people, again, are in a different context. So some of our lessons learned, you'll see some similarities here. Stephanie talked a lot about frameworks, building frameworks for content, and that's what I refer to as context. It was very important, all of the solutions we've created for products, we have solutions for our competencies, corporately our talent planning process. We always start with the context of the learner. What are the situations they'll be in when they're trying to access this information or this support? And then we work backwards from there. Rather than just taking an e-learning course, putting it online, we're trying to determine when you're in the client's lobby, what kind of information would you need, how quickly would you need it, and what would be the search terms you're looking for so we can tag content, tag it appropriately. If you're a designer and you're looking for this information, you're looking for product specification information, what might your context be? And then we work backwards from that, take all of our content and see where does it fit into that framework. Probably the biggest shift for the learning and development team and for the subject matter experts working with us on this project was to kind of turn that model on our head, because for us, for many years, it was take all the content and publish that and not give the learners much guidance on what to choose and when. Chasing devices, it's been a challenge for us, I'll admit. We're getting better, and I think we have some solutions in place in about 6 months. But the request came in almost immediately, especially from our dealer network, which we have no IT control over them. They're independently owned companies around the world. So we found ourselves immediately trying to respond to all these requests for devices. And instead of focusing our energy on getting it working really well on the browser, really well on the BlackBerry, and really well in the SCORM environment. So we had to stop those knee-jerk reactions initially when a new device request would come in, stay focused. Now the stage is set with our corporate IT policy shifting, the technology shifting out in the marketplace. We're in a good place to stop the chase, I think, and truly move to a device-agnostic place. Ownership we have put with the client clearly for many years, really from day one. And what I mean by that is we've never advertised this as a learning and development initiative. When it's a product-based solution, we invite the product managers and the marketing team when they're announcing their product launch, where to get the information. So here's where the brochure is, here's where the client-facing presentation is that you can customize, here's where your performance support is, and so on. It becomes part of the list, and we let them communicate that, and that's been very powerful. We've done the same thing with our IT performance support solutions, our competencies performance support solutions. We always let them, and part of that was frankly difficult because the mobile solution was really a first of its kind in our business, and I had to sit back, smile, and let them take all the credit. But I was okay with that because the payback in terms of them getting on board and joining us in this shift was well worth letting them take that. Some of those relationships I just touched on that were critical for me to develop were with our marketing team. One of the interesting things that happened when we first introduced this is I got a phone call from a very senior leader in marketing, kind of along the lines of, "What are you doing?" And I replied, I'm giving people access to information and learning right in the palm of their hands, right when they need it. And their thought was, well, it looks like the same information I publish in the brochure or on our public website, and it's mobile, so isn't that marketing? And it led backwards to, we worked our way backwards into a very productive conversation around, information, knowledge, learning, support, and agreeing that it's a gray line. It's fuzzy, and it's okay. We ended up in a place where we're okay crossing each other's lines a bit. But in hindsight, that's a conversation I would have had sooner with them. And also, the relationship with IT has been critical through all of this. When we first started going mobile, they weren't ready. So I went to them and said, I'd like to. I have a very relevant business case, which they agreed with. And they were willing to give me enough support. The exchange from them is I share all the learning from my learning with them. So they're not ready to go mobile. They have a business partner who has a solid business case, enough so that they're willing to give me a few resources to help. But in a way, they let me kind of break the ice. They let me get the phone call from marketing executives. They let me learn how to communicate this out to our learners, and then they can leverage all that learning for their benefit. And then measurement's has always been interesting. We are very good at measuring efficiency. We know who's touching what and how often. We're getting better at measuring the effectiveness and the impact and forming some partnerships to better do that. But be prepared to have the conversation, and in my instance, it was okay to say we don't know, but here's how we're going to try. And we keep trying, we're getting better at it. But the information wasn't really available in the beginning. So those are the key points I'd like to share with you. One thing I'd add is Stephanie and I will be hosting an exchange with Laura's group Towards Maturity tomorrow afternoon at 2, where we're going to discuss this question. You heard us both talk a lot about design and some of the challenges with design. And I'll be sharing more of my story tomorrow in booth 69 if you'd like to see that. And I'll turn it back over to Laura.
Again, great insights there, Jeremy. Let's just show our appreciation before we bombard him with questions.
Thank you.
So I think that's a really interesting example of how the mobile strategy is kind of developing and responding to the demand of learners as well. So some good insights. I've got lots of questions. I'm sure you have as well. Who would like to start with a question about some practical implementation ideas? Thank you.
You've only got a limited number of products, you said, on the platform. Do you find that there's a lot higher sales of those products, or has it been any measurement to see the impact from your support?
That's difficult to see, only because in our business, our new products typically do sell better. It's something new for the A&D firms that are really often our entry point into the large clients, the architectural and design firms. So it's hard to know. We really try to do evidence-based measurement. So we will suggest that it had an impact on it, but we won't claim, that performance support was the reason the sales were higher. So it's hard to see that relationship specifically, only because of our industry. People like the new things and they tend to buy them.
Do your executive teams or the sales teams actually perceive that your support is helping them in that space?
Certainly. When we've done the less formal studies, the surveys, the interviews, everyone believes it's adding value, and it is speeding up the sales process.
And I think that's one of the things that most of us are challenged with, is that how do we demonstrate back the value that we're adding to the bottom line when we can't see a direct link? And yet often it's about just having the question up front, say, what are we trying to achieve through this solution? And then going back and saying, how do you think we've contributed to that? So I think there's some interesting lessons there. There was another question just here.
Thank you. Hi. I just wondered whether speakers have an opinion on whether adding this type of information as it's kind of a job aid to staff out in the field, whether eventually you think there'll be some impact on the type of staff that you select, because their job has changed slightly, because although, you're clearly adding information that they can go and get, but there's some people are perhaps better able to do that than others. Do you think there'll be some feedback loop to type of staff you select, or do you just see it as clear as just adding information for the staff you already have?
It's an interesting question, and actually something Laura just said triggered a similar thought for me. Is when we look at usage, you can definitely see trends, and based on, I want to be careful here. We can see differences in usage based on learning styles, regions, leadership. So there are a whole host of things that impact use. But one of the things we clearly recognize is anyone we've hired in the last 3 years, since we've introduced the solution, they start using it immediately. We don't need to really explain to them what it is and what purpose it serves. Or we do very briefly, and then they adopt it very quickly, and they use it in a sustained manner. It's really the people that were already in the sales organization when we introduced the solution, where we had to invest much more time and energy in change management.
Yes.
So the onboarding process, we get them, we help them see, recognize what moment are they in. Here are the different choices you have based on the moment. And for them, it's how it works at Herman Miller. They don't know
so there's perhaps more, you need to add more, give more support to perhaps the ones that have been in the organisation for longer, is what you're saying.
Yes.
It's an age thing. I can say that as I'm over 40s. But
it might well be an experience thing as well. If you're in an organisation for longer, and then you're used to receiving your training or learning in a particular way. Stephanie, I wonder if you've got any observations on different learner types or demographics who may have accepted this?
Interesting question. We're again at the very, very beginning of this, but we built it for them. So our goal here is to gain their feedback, and we want it to be a resource tool for them, and they're hungry for the information. So we have a very differing type of age range, et cetera, in our drive-ins. But what we found so far is that it's something, mobile phones are just so everyday for everybody, and they almost expect it. So, I haven't really seen any type of difference between users.
I'm interested also in the group. Sorry, that's another question first. Come back to me. I'll put my one on hold.
Jeremy, you talked about that it was there was somebody from marketing saying, "Isn't this marketing?" Was this a corporate decision going into this mobile part, or was it more like a local departmental or functional decision?
It was a very localized decision, and that was quite deliberate, given our corporate culture. There's a risk either way, certainly, and I experienced some of that when I got the executive call. But had my bigger concern was that had I vet this entirely with all of IT and all of marketing and all of sales leadership, I might not be here today. You know, speaking to you, sharing the solution with you, to me there was more risk in wading into all of the politics and the governance than there was taking a chance, finding a few allies. I was working with people in IT ranks and in marketing ranks to develop and launch the solution, and to some degree they informed their superiors. But it was deliberate to be a bit under the radar in the beginning. Once they saw the solution, I said, as I mentioned, then the larger challenge for me was demand. People were wanting newsletters, people were wanting reliability statistics, warranty statistics, those kinds of things all sent to mobile, and that's why I'd say I'm just interested in this performance piece. But I did create kind of a challenge for the broader organization in terms of, you know, what do we do mobily as a business?
So primarily it was a positive disturbance to the organization.
It was disruptive. In the end, it was positive. There were a few rocky points, but yeah, again, the decision was very deliberate to be, I wouldn't say, you know, covert, but relatively under the radar in the beginning. That might be unique to our organization. But
so Stephanie, you had a very clear view of your strategy, where you were going. Did you feel yours was also under the radar as well, or how did
Well,
that
it was
work for you?
interesting. Ours began that way in the operations group, because we disseminate our own information for our area, and it's very critical. What we do is very critical for the operation of the drive-ins. And through the grapevine, we heard marketing was looking at something very similar. So that was our very first thing we wanted to do, was get the entire executive team together along with IT and do a demo. We wanted to be out there first, really. And that's exactly what we did. And so everyone else is, I think the other departments are sort of holding off. They're not quite ready yet. But I think we have, you know, we have our development tool, and everyone will migrate to that. So it was pretty easy. We were kind of the first ones to say, here we are, here it is. So.
That was a make or break meeting for you, to be fair, from thumbs down.
Oh, yes. And we delivered how quickly it was to produce it, and you can do it in weeks, and here's the tool, and showed them how easy it was, and that was huge for them as well.
I think it illustrates something that's really important, is that as learning and development professionals, we have to be ready to catch the wave. And sometimes we can do it under the radar, and in fact our own research says that actually of the top learning companies, they're 3 to 4 times more likely to be trialing out things under the radar in their organization than those that are actually reporting kind of fewer results. So there is something about going under the radar, but there's also something about being ready to be in there and taking the lead as well. So I think they're 2 very good examples. So I don't think there's any excuse for anyone in the room to say we can't do one or the other there. So I think that's useful. Are there any other comments or even observations? We've had some really interesting practical ideas of how to get learning, mobile learning into organisations. You may also have some of your own ideas to exchange. We've got a time to do that. A question or an idea at the back here.
Sorry, I'm going to, probably just disappoint you slightly. I didn't have much more to add there. It's more of a question. And I was just reflecting on both of your stories, and thanks for sharing them, centred around the idea that you had some conversations where the mobile wasn't to be instead of, but it was to add to and to augment what you already had. And I wondered, do you think in the long term that will still be the same place? So do you actually see that in a longer term or medium term, actually you'll find that maybe you will do less traditional content creation that you used to do, and rely more on the performance support type stuff that you've talked about today?
Stephanie, do you want to go first on that question?
I think ours will always maintain the quick resource tool for our managers. It's just the way our business is. They do not, I mean, it's just constant like this in the drive-in. So they don't have a lot of time to sit down and look at a computer and even that. And our LMS definitely serves its purpose, and it also can be transferred into mobile as well. But it's a different type of content. So I don't really foresee our content ever, going back to the LMS type for us.
For us, some of the same is true. I mean, we have some, we're not nearly as regulated as probably a food industry or a healthcare industry, but we have some of our own. So there'll always be some need, but I think for us it'll be more of a shift. We've been seeing that there are less and less formal learning scheduled. Let's say, I mean, for example, launching a product 8 years ago would require half a dozen people traveling the country for 6 months. And visiting every one of our 300 or so resellers and all of our sales offices. And now we only go out to the market statistical areas where we think it makes sense to make that investment. So if we know we're behind in our market share in seating in San Francisco, for example, we'll send kind of the SWAT team there to do some targeted learning. But the across the country kind of brushstroke we've already left that way behind. So we are seeing a shift, certainly.
Right. Are there any other questions from the audience? I do have a question.
Hi, Stephanie and Jeremy. Do you see this as a potential game changer in terms of the working day? So clearly this is now 24/7, and I guess is that positive? Or have you had any negativities around that approach? And also, I'm interested in if there's any examples of personal versus work phones. So certainly in our company at the minute, there's a question around, should we really enable people on their personal phones? Should we have that expectation that they use their personal phones? Or should it just be restricted to their work phones? Just interested if there's any views on that.
Sure, I'll start. The personal versus work, we've actually, as we've moved to this device of choice, we probably would have moved there faster, but our legal team, our IT team, they've had to work through all of that detail. I would say very few people that I encounter have an issue with it. They're just pleased to have the information, be able to use it in the sales process. In terms of the work day, we haven't communicated an expectation of now you can work 24/7. I think that again is a matter of personal preference and what we're seeing in an organization which is working very hard. It's like most of your businesses. I mean, the way we work has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. And people, the convenience it gives them, the opportunity it gives them, the differentiation it provides them far outweighs their policy concerns, their work-life balance concerns. That's their individual choice. It's not non-existent. We do hear a few grumblings, but.
I agree with that 100%. That's exactly how we operate. 90% of our managers, their mobile phones are their personal phones. So we're going to have to deal with that. And our managers pretty much run their business 24/7. I mean, they're always in touch with what's going on. And I think giving them the flexibility and convenience, like you said, of having that type of information with them even when they're not at the drive-in is critical for them. So.
Yeah, many of our accounts are global accounts. So we might have someone in Washington, D.C. trying to coordinate a project with someone in Saudi Arabia. And so I mentioned our sales organization is becoming more global and mobile. That doesn't just mean that we have more salespeople in different areas of the world. It means they're collaborating to try to land global accounts and have them be coordinated for us as a business.
Are there any other questions for the team? So I have a question really for you, because we've got a moment. we're talking about, we had two very good examples where there were a lot of excellent shared good practice about aligning to business, supporting learner at the point of need. But the two stories differed slightly in the role of content in that process, and I think that you're very strongly about content has to be repurposed, and you're very much, it has to work on different, different devices in the way of doing content. And I just wondered if anyone in the room has got any observations on their own experience or on the benefits of one over the other. Should we be repurposing content? Have you got an example of that? Or is it better to have, or are there certain situations where it differs? So your turn to perhaps share some of your experiences.
I think I work with many companies around the globe. I run a global learning technology company, so it's probably the sum total of what I'm hearing. When one goes to mobile, we go to mobile because we have mobile workers. Somebody's stuck in an office, maybe it's not as important to go mobile. And the issue is what's changed about their work. The way in which they work is changing. As a result, the context within which they need to access content changes. So because of that, I'm starting to see that although it's practical and IT loves the idea, let's develop content only once and it could be used everywhere. It's true, technically it can be, but you have to think of how it will be used. And unfortunately, it's difficult to magically come up with one piece that will be as effective in all contexts. So although we can, I think that that challenge would remain, will stay for a while.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Thank you, Ara. Any others who've got experience in kind of making decisions on one versus the other?
Well, something that was interesting for us, we had to really fight to get our users to adopt e-learning to begin with, because it is a hard environment to sit down at a computer. But what was interesting is when we showed them the mobile device, they wanted it. I mean, they were handing me their phone, telling me to put it on there. So we saw a huge shift of, we have to, force them to use this tool to let me have it. So I saw a huge shift in that. That was interesting for us.
Yeah, and I agree, and one of the trade-offs we've made is we still get payback from the efficiencies of the single source publishing model. We optimize towards the mobile platforms and then work backwards. So in a sense, I've made my e-learning less effective by making my performance support more effective. So clearly a compromise, and that's while we still work in that way, we lean definitely towards the performance support and let the other outputs be what they are.
I think we've had some excellent conversations this afternoon, so thank you so much for contributing your questions, some very practical questions and practical answers. And I'd certainly like to vouch for the advice that we've been given really does work, certainly in the benchmark that we've been doing, starting from the point of what do we need to do in the business, how do we align with the business, how do we measure, how do we think about how we help people apply learning back into the organisation. These are all characteristics of the top performing organisations, so I think it's really worth taking away one or two ideas from this session and say, I'm going to try this out, I'm going to have a new conversation. I'd also like to encourage you as well, because obviously mobile and bring your own device is a very hot topic in the conversation. We heard it this morning, and also when we go down onto the exhibition floor. So do look out. There are some organisations downstairs who are really thought through the practical issues, and certainly on the back of the infographic that you've got on the research, there's a lot of organisations where you can just go and pick up practical ideas about how to make this work. And certainly CertPoint are on here, and also your organisation with Intuitive, who you were working with, and also many of the other organisations in this room are all doing some really practical things. And if you haven't got a lot of time, it's good to kind of just make a beeline to just one or two, just to compare notes. And so they've done a lot of work in pulling together some non-sales literature and practical advice. So I'd certainly recommend that you perhaps use this. If you haven't got a lot of time in the exhibition to use this, and pick up 5 or 6 pieces. You could also be in with a chance of winning something as well. So on that light-hearted note, I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking the speakers again for sharing their experience. Do plan to visit them on the exchange tomorrow if you want to have a more detailed conversation. 2 o'clock, stand 99. And I think it's champagne time now. So thank you all as well, and thank you to the speakers.